Thank you very much, Adrian. A very good evening to everyone gathered here at Napa this afternoon and to the many tens of thousands of you who are following us on various platforms in our nation and outside of Trinidad and Tobago today. Welcome to Napa, welcome to this national exercise, part of it being executed within the PNM. I would like to acknowledge the presence of all our party officers led by Party Chairman Stuart Young, our deputy political leaders, all four of them here this afternoon, General Secretary Foster Cummings, Treasurer, Assistant General Secretary, all the executive members of the PNM. I acknowledge you at this point in time. And I too acknowledge the ever-present Joe Newell Williams, resplendently outfitted in this afternoon. I had the experience of being in a PNM meeting and there were only two of us, myself and Patrick Manning. And I suspect if I ever have a PNM meeting and there are only two of us now, it will be me and Joe Newell Williams. But ladies and gentlemen, seriously, we are gathered here. I must thank you all, especially delegates, for giving up your Sunday afternoon and coming here to do the exercise of the party and of the country. I want to thank the organizers who have brought us to this place and hope that we would make full use of every minute that is allocated to us this afternoon here. Why are we here? We are here to treat with this document. For those of you who've seen the document, I must tell you that the people who caused it to be produced under Chairman Barry Sinanan, they are mortally afraid of this document being called the Sinanan Report. It is not the Sinanan Report. It is called We the People. So this is the We the People report, which we're dealing with. I didn't ask for that. But I would just take a few minutes to tell you how we went and how we got here. This is the second term that this group that I lead in cabinet and lead in the party had the opportunity to be in government. We came into government in 2015, a very difficult period, took a few months well to get the ship righted and to cope with the situation then. And just as we were beginning to get the better of the situations, we had in 2019 COVID-19. We had a general election in 2020, and we contested that election and we won it. We are now in government in that term. In 2023, as leader of the government, I took the opportunity to spend some time trying to respond to this general, how should I put it? I don't want to say throwaway, but the general comment whenever we are confronted with some intractable national problems, you usually hear, the problem is the Constitution. An old colleague of mine called Basdio Pandey, in his retirement, regardless of what the problem was, once you confronted and asked for a comment in his retirement, he will tell you, nothing will be done until we amend the Constitution. I got accustomed to that. But I never did hear amend what aspect of the Constitution and amend it to what. But one was left to believe that you could accept that the problems that we face, the difficulties that we have to cope with, the hurdles that we have to overcome are in fact matters of the Constitution. That's a fact. And then, of course, very many people, man in the street and woman in the lane, usually would say the same thing too. Even columnists in the newspapers, many of whom would write with great authority. But in reading the script, sometimes you discover that they really have never read the Constitution. Don't have a clue what they're talking about. It's just a useful phrase that you interject to give some kind of, you know, when you make a certain, like an oil dung, there's something you add to it. You make fish broth, you add salt, butter, that kind of thing. And the Constitution was being used like that by very many people. But there are genuine concerns. Even if one cannot put your finger on the pulse of it, or on the phrase, or on the article in the Constitution, I came to the conclusion that enough people have taken shade under the Constitution tree and required to be identified so that we know where we're going and what we're required to do. A Constitution that has never been amended in a country that lives on is probably in a place that is not evolving. The US Constitution, that is a couple of hundred years old and more, has some significant amendments, as sound as the original is, and as committed as that population is to e pluribus unum and the defense of the original Constitution. They've amended it a number of times. I think it's about 15 or 16 times. And each amendment assumes a great responsibility for the population going forward. Because an amendment to a constitution is done by the present for the future. And I thought that this was a good time after 76. In 2023, I thought it was a good time to put the exercise before the people. And I set about to ask members of the national community who I believe had what it takes to be a group that can consult with the population on the issues that ail them, which they believe are matters of the Constitution. Now, this group, and I will tell you who they are, because it's important for you to know who they are, because already, as the exercise gains momentum, I have seen certain usual suspects attempting to cast aspersions not only on the process, but on the individuals who undertook this national exercise. And who are they? Barendra Sinanan, Senior Counsel, he's the chairman. He was a former PNM MP, of course, as you know. He was a former Speaker of the Parliament. Ray Sandy, a former Chief Administrator of the Tobago House of Assembly. Dr. Terence Farrell, attorney at law and an economist of great standing in this country, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank and a sometime columnist. Mr. Nizam Mohammed, attorney at law and former Speaker of the House as well, and former member of, he was a chairman of the Police Service Commission, and of course, being in the Parliament, he was not a PNM member in the Parliament. I think he was NAR, yes, NAR. Jackie Sampson Miguel, attorney at law, former clerk of the House. Subsequent to doing this exercise, she has now been appointed Ombudsman Trinidad and Tobago. She is no longer on the committee, of course. Hema Narayan Singh, consulting managing partner of one of the major accounting firms in the country, Ernst & Young, private citizen. Winston Rudder, Public Service Commission chairman, former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. And Mrs. Helen Drayton, former independent senator. Now, this is quite a spectrum of people from different perspectives, different angles of the national community. I could tell you, I only know one of them being associated with the PNM as a member of the PNM, and that person is the chairman, Barendra Sinanan. All the other people, I do not know of them having any association with the PNM. Public. They may have voted for the PNM, I don't know, but they all know. So this was a group of people who this afternoon, as leader of the government, just of the party, I want to thank them for agreeing to do this exercise. Because it was my expectation that persons who were approached to do this could easily have slid away by saying, again, I'm not going to waste my time to produce a report. We've had one year naught, we have had one year 10, we had one year 76. But I must tell you that all these citizens understood the importance of the exercise and maybe the timeliness of it, and they agreed not to prepare a constitution for us, as was done at one time early on. We all know that Sir Ellis Clark actually had the job of drafting a constitution for Trinidad and Tobago as we approach independence. We know that. But that's not how it is being done now. This committee had a terms of reference, which I'll come to, and you will understand. And if I read from the summary here, it would be easier and you will get a clearer picture as to how we got here. The committee had the following terms of reference: to formulate terms of reference for a national dialogue on constitutional reform for Trinidad and Tobago, to initiate, consult widely, and guide the national debate towards the generation of a package of ideas and opinions which will be distilled into a working document which will become the working document for the Constitution Conference to be held in June 2024. This is the document that they set out to produce. It has been produced. So already we are making some progress. And it had to incorporate within its proposed terms of reference outline parameters of subject matter for national debate and for the engagement of the widest cross-section of persons and bodies representing the citizenry, with a view to promoting meaningful consultations, debate and engagement in the offering and exchange of opinions, and the making of recommendations for constitutional reform for Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, to consider and make recommendations to the Cabinet within 3 months of its appointment for the promoting and convening of a national constitutional conference and consultation in June 2024. The committee initially was given 3 months to complete its assignment. However, an extension was granted for the committee to complete its work. The committee spent the initial 6 weeks until March 2024 in intensive preparatory work, determining the scope of the assignment and key activities, establishing its secretariat, planning its logistics, and conducting the exercise within the given time frame, and developing a budget for approval. The committee had a number of officers supplied, public officials, public servants of various skills, supplied by the Ministry of Public Administration, that had to provide the personnel. The committee consulted with experts in law, and they proceeded to establish objectives of the reform. And let me just quote 2 paragraphs here for you as to how the committee was motivated. The committee appreciated from the outset that constitutional reform is not an exercise in superficiality, in fixing or tinkering with selective sections of the Constitution. Rather, the impetus for reform comes from a recognition that the contract between the state and the people and the institutions of state itself needed to be rethought. The committee was also clear that there is no best way to effect reform of the Constitution. It's an intensely political process, since any serious reform exercise involves the redistribution of power within the society, and there may be resistance to change by those who benefit from the status quo. Ladies and gentlemen, if I just indicate to you who the committee interfaced with, I come to the appendices of the report and just give you a little flavor of what went on. At the appendices, you would see Appendix 1. As I said earlier on, very many people talk about the Constitution, invoke the Constitution, cry out to the Constitution to solve the problem. They did that during this exercise. And the committee received a number of recommendations in written public submissions, to the commission. They received 104 of those that the committee determined not to have anything to do with the Constitution. But it had to do with problems that people had. Because I could tell you as a politician, any problem anybody has, that is the most important problem in the country. Whatever it might be, road, drain, mosquito, contract, that is the most important problem to them. And to these 104 people who saw it fit to write to the commission, knowing that it was a constitution commission, clearly they were of the view that the problems that they had recommendations for were matters of the Constitution. But unfortunately, the committee concluded that these were matters, while they were important matters, they did not require attention by the Constitution. There must be another way to address those. Then, of course, the committee had 20 recommendations from Youth Forum, had a number of town hall meetings, and they too made significant recommendations, totaling 132. From the town hall meetings that the committee had around the country, they extracted and identified 132 issues that people thought should be. Then we went on in Appendix 2, list of invited stakeholders who submitted recommendations. And it's important that you pay attention to that. So the committee invited certain stakeholders, and they responded. The Integrity Commission, Auditor General's Department, the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Permanent Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, that's the head of the public service, Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Judiciary of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Election and Boundaries Commission, the Service Commissions, those are the JLSC, the Police Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, Teaching Service Commission, the Tobago House of Assembly and the Assemblymen, and the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. These people submitted recommendations. Non-constitutional offices and international diplomatic organizations that participated: the Ministry of Public Administration, the Environmental Management Authority, the Environmental Commission, the Tax Appeal Board of Trinidad and Tobago, the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago, the Equal Opportunities Commission, the Equal Opportunity Tribunal, the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. They all participated. Political parties. Hope. Movement for Social Justice. And surprisingly to me, a party called the National Party. I wasn't aware of that. Those are the three entities listed under political parties that participated. I'm a little disappointed at this stage to say that the group of people who are in fact an arm of the government in the parliament under the leadership of the UNC, I am disappointed that the official opposition chose up to this point to not participate in this process. Because this is in fact not a PNM process, it's a national process. And I would have thought whatever they think of us PNM, that as the government providing the opportunity for this exercise, that whoever you are, politically or otherwise, that you would have participated in the process, bringing your contribution to bear on the national exercise. Unfortunately, there are some people who believe that anything the government does is for the PNM, and not wishing the PNM well, that you don't cooperate with it. I trust that after today, as we go forward into the future activities of this exercise, that the UNC's leadership and members would see it fit to participate in this process. I travel in hope and expect to arrive in satisfaction. Civil society, a number of persons, 32 civil society members, entities, Santa Rosa First People, Trinidad and Tobago Deaf Community Service, European Business Chamber, Womantra, Kaiso, Baptist Union, Christian Council of Trinidad and Tobago, Copper Foundation, Cooperative Credit Union, all mansions of the Rastafari, Trinidad and Tobago Carnival Bandy Association, the Law Association, Advertising Agencies Association, United Health Workers Union, Hindu Women's Organization, 32 entities under NGO participated. And of course, in Appendix 3 of the document, it tells us that the committee consulted with experts. And I could mention a number of the experts, some might be familiar to you. Professor Hamid Ghani, Mr. Douglas Mendez SC, Mrs. Deborah Moore Miggins, Professor Ramesh Deusuran, Mr. Russell Martineau, Senior Counsel, Professor Rosemary Bellantoine, Honorable Justice Anthony Lucky, Honorable Justice Vashish Kokaram, Mr. Ramesh Maraj, Sri Malhotra of India. These are experts in the matter of constitution and constitutional arrangements who the committee consulted with. And of course, as I told you earlier on, in the 14 town hall meetings, they had a lot of people. The total number of persons, the total number of individuals who came out to venues and interacted and took part in the oral process with the committee was 785. Now, there's an interesting article today in, I think, the Express, one of the better editorials I've ever seen in the Express. And I recommend it to you because it speaks specifically to this exercise. But I think in there, it says that it's only a small number of people who took part in the process, so therefore their views may not be taken as the view of the wider population. But I simply want to say that if I was doing a poll of the country on any one of the issues touched in here, I think it's 132, and you wanted to do a poll, it would not have been required that you talk to everybody in the country. You do a sample. And a national sample of 700 people can give you a statistical outcome that is mathematically useful. If you're going to ask who should be the prime minister or who should be fired from the cabinet or anything, and you poll 700 people across the country, that is statistically a good sample, size-wise. So therefore, if we treat these almost 800 people as a poll on the issues raised here, we can come to a conclusion that statistically we have sampled the country on it. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what it is. So the work has been done to generate this document, which was reaching out to the public, asking them, what do you think about the Constitution? What is it about the Constitution that concerns you, that you think requires adjusting? And having produced this, the committee asked for some time. You would have heard me mention earlier on that initially the intention was that we could have met in a national forum in June. But it took more time than I had budgeted and more time than the committee budgeted. They asked for an extension up to July, they got it. Then they produced the report, and during August, the report went to cabinet, and it has since been made public. It's on the website of the Prime Minister, it's on the website of the committee, I think, and it is now a public document. This is what the public has been saying about the Constitution, and it was said to a group of people who are not politically partisan. It was as as neutral a committee as you could have had. And they consulted people in a broad spectrum of vocations, professions, and non-vocation. The population has spoken, and that's why it's called the We the People exercise. I met with the committee when they presented this report. Normally when a committee presents a report to the cabinet that appointed the committee, that committee goes out of existence. But in our discussion, it was clear to both sides, the government and the committee, that it would be useful for a period of public education be engaged in, so that the very many people who clearly can benefit from public education on the Constitution can, at this time that this issue is in front of the country, that we add to the responsibility of this committee a period short where they could reach out further and engage in public education with the public before we come to the national forum that had been promised in June. We believe that we might be able to get that done. The cabinet has extended the life of the committee until December. And we are hoping that we can have that national forum after this period of public education, which the Ministry of Government Communication and the committee can engage in, and look at maybe the first week in November to have that national forum where people like us, the PNM, can go to the national forum, other political parties, and any delegates, because the committee makes some recommendations as to how to proceed. It asks for it to be a delegate conference where all the entities, all the clients, all the stakeholders either come in person or be represented by a delegate body that comes to this conference, bringing to it the position of the various entities. And so today is the PNM talking about the PNM's exercise, because once the committee set about to meet the public and to take testimony from the public, we of the PNM, being a responsible and orderly entity, we set about within the party to put a committee in place, having been told that the Constitution is up for examination. The PNM took it as a very important exercise, appointed a committee chaired by the Honorable Keith Scotland, involving Minister Renuka Segram Singh as its secretary, Dr. Jeremy Innes, Assistant Secretary, Ms. Solange de Souza, His Worship the Mayor, Alderman Chinua Aline, Mr. Jennifer Baptiste Primus, the Youth League member, Shenika Curtin, Mr. Lennox Ratan Singh, and Attorney Farai Hove Masaisai. This was the PNM's committee to go inside of the party, raise with them the issue of the Constitution, receive from them their inputs as to what the PNM's voices are saying or would like to see addressed in the Constitution. And of course, our document has that presented to us. And today, one of the things that we'll do, in fact, the main thing we'll do today is to treat with what the PNM has extracted within its fold by our committee, and to express ourselves on it here in preparation for going to the national conference when that national conference is called. And that is why we are here today in a special convention. Now, special conventions are not because we haven't had one for a long time. And it's not because something special is happening and you could do it in a crowd. A special convention is called to deal with a specific matter. And that is why today, the singular specific matter that we're dealing with this afternoon is the work of the Scotland Committee, having been out there wanting to take part in the national conference that is to come, and reporting to the party as to what party members have said across the territory of Trinidad and Tobago, And we here today, there'll be some expressions of views because the committees will report as to what they would want to say, what they would want to support, what they oppose, because I can tell you, because the committee has put work together, it doesn't mean that there's support for it, because some of it come from some quarters which the PNM may have difficulty with. But let us go with an open mind and our book, Tabula Rasa, clean tabletop, and hear what we have to hear what has been put to us by our members, take your position as you've heard it, and prepare our organization to go forward in a national conference on the Constitution that is due to come sometime in the not too distant future. Thank you very much for coming. Let's have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And thank you for